Welcome to North Coast Angel Fund's Angel Education Session, Anatomy of a Great Startup. This is the first advanced angel session of the year. We did a 101 earlier to get people on the same page. I know I am going to learn a lot. There's going to be a lot of good conversation with panelists, and we're hopeful to create a level of dialogue that will lead to better, smarter investing on our part as a fund and on the part of individual angel investors in Northeast Ohio. As we get going here, we're going to share a bit of the agenda. We're then going to transition into a high-level overview. Part of the context for Anatomy of a Great Startup is understanding what that means. We're going to look at some North Coast data from the last 12 years. As you might imagine, over 12 years of investing, some things have worked out very well. Some things have not worked out as we would have hoped. And we've learned a lot in both of those cases, and it's informed our thesis and our strategy going forward, giving us more of a perspective for how we should be investing and what we think that this region is best positioned to be successful at as it relates to early stage investing. We have two terrific panels. One will take the entrepreneur's perspective on the anatomy of a great startup. The other will take the corporate perspective, because we think that B2B startups need to be working with companies with pilots much earlier than they typically do. It's something we're trying to encourage more of. We'll do a brief wrap up. We will have a door prize, which is an important element of what we do. You have to be here to be eligible. And the door prize is a bottle, as it always is at our angel education events, of Angels Envy Kentucky Bourbon. I'll leave it right here, just so people can look at it and think about it during the session. We started enjoying it because of the name. We have failed to get sponsorship from them, to my dismay. But we're hopeful if we mention it enough times that we'll get a special relationship with Angels Envy. You have to be here. We'll draw the equivalent of names out of a hat, and happy to send that home with someone, followed by spending a little time down on the third floor. Before going forward, though, I wanted to just briefly mention a little bit about this series, thank PNC for their support, and then ask Dave Lougheed from Hawthorne and PNC to come up and join us in a moment. This is our third year of having Angel Education series. It comes from the understanding that we've learned a lot in doing this, and there's a lot more to learn. It's easy sometimes to assume that picking companies is the important part, when in reality we need to have an understanding, a thesis, select companies, help those companies grow and become successful and eventually exit. There's a lot of work to do, and we think that we can create some additional visibility into angel education. PNC has stepped up this year and has supported the entire series. This is an important event. PNC has a long history of supporting business and civic events in the region. We appreciate their support, and I'd ask you to join me in thanking PNC and Hawthorne for helping us tonight. Before we get into the program, I wanted to invite Dave Lougheed from Hawthorne and PNC up just for a moment to say a few words.
All right, if I'm up here any more than 60 seconds, it's too long. We don't make bourbon. We sell money, and we manage money as well. So on behalf of PNC, we're happy to be sponsoring this series, and we're pleased to be back for our second event. As Todd mentioned, we support a number of arts, education, and civic events. We've been committed to doing that for a long time. We remain committed to that, and we remain committed to the economic growth of the region, which is why supporting North Coast Angel Fund and the educational series that is going on here is so important to us. I'm joined by a number of our colleagues from our wealth management group, as well as Hawthorne. Chances are, if you see someone in a tie, that is them. Apologies to those who don't work for PNC who are wearing a tie. If you get assaulted later, we'll take full responsibility. But again, we're happy to be here, pleased to be supporting this event, and with that, we'll go ahead and hand it back over. Thank you.
in 2019, someone has to support the Thai industry, so I'm sure they're also appreciative for the banking sector. Well, we'll mention we have 2 more angel education events later this year. Emails will come out with logistics and panelists, but please note these. They should be on a piece of paper you have in front of you. We'd love to have you for what will be a very nice follow-up to this event. Also important is us thanking our Innovation Council supporters. Many of you know that there are over 20 corporations and institutions that support the general North Coast Angel Fund mission in Northeast Ohio. Beyond the financial support, it's an opportunity to do 3 things which we think create significant value. One is to provide access to startup know-how and innovation to the corporations. Second is to provide guidance for us as we do diligence in specific industries and functional areas where these corporate partners in Cleveland can add insight. And perhaps most importantly is to have the corporations and institutions of the region better connect with and potentially partner with startups. Startups solve a lot of problems in a lot of parts of the country. In Northeast Ohio, we haven't had as much connectivity between early stage companies and the business community. This is an effort to do so, and we've seen some terrific results so far. Part of what you'll hear as far as our investment thesis and why we invest the way we do is because we have a more active business community, more interested in the startup sector, which we think provides a strategic advantage. So anatomy of a startup. How many of you have ever taken an anatomy class? More than a few. I remember very little from mine. I don't know how many of you remember a lot from yours. There's a lot of data and information, and in a system, there are a lot of variables that can influence health, performance, and outcomes. It is not dissimilar in the early stage angel investing world. When we think of anatomy of a great startup, one of the questions we asked in putting the session together is to who? And for us, it's a couple of things. One, it's the region, because in Northeast Ohio or places in the country that are not Northern California, Boston, perhaps New York, Austin, Boulder, there's a different set of resources, opportunities, and we think that an effective thesis for investing has to consider where you are. We think that this is designed to be appropriate towards individual angel investors, but more importantly to a group like North Coast and to the business community, because we see the thesis being wrapped around the engagement of all those groups. At the end of the day, there are tangible aspects to the anatomy of a great startup and intangible aspects. I'm going to do the easy part up front with the tangible aspects, and we're going to ask our panelists to speak more to some of the intangibles. I'm going to talk just a little bit about North Coast because it is relevant to the thesis and kind of why we do what we do. Many of you know this is a for-profit investment group where people show up because they believe there'll be a return, but also because they're receiving gratification, satisfaction, enjoyment from working with successful companies, building great companies in the region, helping startups and CEOs grow their companies and create wealth and opportunity for the region. We do this by working together. Many of you have been to North Coast Angel Fund meetings. You'll know that there are hundreds of people in our group. All these people have written a check, shown up, engaged in our supporting entrepreneurship, and we hope benefiting from investing in these early stage companies. We've invested in 53 companies, deployed over $60 million, and that's the basis of some of the data that we'll be sharing here with you shortly. This is what it looks like. A lot of people on any given day can be at a board meeting, at an investment screening committee, in diligence, advising startups. And you may ask, why do all this work? Why go to the time and energy of trying to mobilize so many people to engage in the startup ecosystem here in Northeast Ohio? It's because startups are really risky and hard, and without this kind of work, we think there's a very low likelihood of success. This is some high-level data from Crunchbase showing over 1,000 startups and their results over a several-year period across multiple funding rounds. What it shows is that each round, on average, about half the companies go away. And what that means in most cases is that they fail. So we know a majority of these outcomes are not going to be successful. What we want to do is be better at predicting what types of companies are going to be successful and focusing there. The next set of data is also from Crunchbase. This is looking at a series of 100 post-mortems, so evaluating why startups fail. What's interesting to us is 2 of the top 3 reasons, no market need and not the right team, are things that we should be better at assessing upfront, in diligence, and we hope by plugging companies into the business community, their potential pilot customers and partners, we can get that kind of feedback. Part of what we'll do tonight is to try to talk about what types of companies, what the signals are we're trying to read that will let us know these startups are more likely to be successful than not. In case anyone can't see the full thing, I'll take a moment to read the high level of our thesis and then say what it means. What we've come to understand is that North Coast is more likely to be successful in our investments across those 53 investments if we stick to this knitting. That we invest primarily, and primarily means mostly, doesn't mean always, in high growth potential. These are companies that can double in sales every year. High growth at a startup is not 10%, 20% growth. These are typically seed stage. This means that there are 3 to 5 people. There may be a minimum viable product, perhaps an initial customer, but this is not a company with several $1 billion of revenue. This is typically not a company with 20 or 30 people. This is a true seed stage deal. For us, we see more success investing in business-to-business opportunities. This means there's an entity that's experiencing a problem that has a budget to solve that problem, and a person whose job it is to buy the solution and solve the problem. That doesn't mean that we're taking all of the other risks out of the equation, but it really allows us to focus on market risk and product development risk as opposed to invention risk, some of the regulatory risks that we can see in other types of investments. Software as a service for us is broad. We had a group just the other day that was debating how best to define software as a service. For us, it is software-enabled offerings, and is typically something that sees a 70% gross margin, has repeatability and scalability around 2 important things: selling, and then also delivering and supporting the software. If we see that kind of scalability, we think it fits our thesis very well. Solving big problems, $20 million markets, $50 million markets are typically not worth the risk capital and the time and energy that a group like ours or a venture fund would put in. The last 2 items here are focusing on regional strengths. We are hopeful that we can partner with companies and institutions here to lend guidance, to tap in. That doesn't mean that we're going to do all medical devices, of course, because we have clinic, UH, and Metro. What it means is that we are especially attuned to helping solve problems in medical institutions with software. Same for the insurance industry with Progressive being here. So that's the type of approach we take to corporate partnerships. And lastly, we look for opportunities where we, as angel investors, can provide significant value to the startups. Some of the information I'm going to share is specific to our fund and is sensitive, but we want to put it out there because it's a baseline for learning. This is the general view of how we look at our portfolio. These are all 53 investments that we've made, looking across industry and looking across fund. What we did is we evaluated how well these investments fit into our current investment thesis, and then we took a look at how well they're performing. You may ask, how subjective or objective is that? Both. The extent to which it fits in our investment thesis is fairly objective. The criteria I mentioned are relatively easy to measure. Performance is easier to measure than one might think as well. Excuse me. When we look at the companies that we've had exits on, we've had 4 exits. I think you'd all agree that those companies are successful. We look at the companies here circled in black that we've lost all of our money on. I imagine you'd agree with us that these are unsuccessful. The companies in the middle are where you could say there's some subjectivity. But in reality, I'd be surprised if anyone felt that a company here belongs all the way down here. So I'd ask you to suspend disbelief as we go through this analysis and take a couple learnings away here. Oh, thank you, I appreciate that. This is A+ service, I appreciate So on the left, these are companies that are not in thesis for workers. Often they're medical devices, there's technology risk, there's regulatory risk. In some cases, they're consumer, not B2B. If we take a look at this data, and I will cheat and give you the actual data so we don't have to count. On the left, there are 17 companies we invested in over our history that are inventions. 11 of those have failed or are expected to fail. 4 are performing at an average level, and only 2 have performed at the level we would hope. If we look on the other extreme at companies that fit into our thesis very well, there are 14 of those, and only 3 have failed. 3 of our 4 exits live in that category. So we think what that tells us is something important, and that is that companies that fit our thesis historically are more likely to yield a successful outcome. This is the actual data when we evaluated the correlation. What it tells us is that the data makes sense. We can look at that and understand that this is a data set we believe is not simply the rearview mirror, but it's also reflective of how we invest today. So how many of you think that because we have that data, we now have an algorithm that will tell us how to invest successfully in startups? Anyone? Mike's optimistic. Mike's thinking about it. Boy, I wish that was the case. But this is an important piece of it. I think if we can better select these companies, better use some of these criteria, we will be more strongly positioned. Those are the tangibles. The intangibles are things like team, skill sets, how quickly a market is growing, how it compares to the competition, how likely something is to get funded. Those are a lot harder, and that's why I'm going to punt all that to our 2 terrific panels that we have today. I will invite panel number 1 up to join us. Adam Kaufman has been kind enough to assemble the panel and also to lead the session. So please join me in thanking them, and we'll transition to panel number 1.
Okay, I'm going to introduce, hello everyone. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, North Coast Angel Fund. I'm going to introduce, sit down guys, Charlie Lougheed and Marty Tarr. We have about 35 minutes only, and when Todd asked me to get involved in this session, we were debating 2 or 3 panelists, but I said if we could get these 2, we don't need a third because very few people in Cleveland have experience what these entrepreneurs have. Both of them have sold businesses they founded to public corporations. There's not a lot of that in Cleveland. And Charlie has even sold 3 companies, successfully exited 3 companies. And I can think of only 3 human beings in Northeast Ohio who can say that. So really a lot of experience to share. And they both agreed to even let me interrupt them so that we can get as many topics and questions in as possible. But I encourage you to look at their bios online. I don't want to waste our limited time with that, but you guys good to go here?
Yeah, good job.
Okay, good. So what Todd asked us to speak about today, and I want to actually primarily also thank the guests in the room. We need more angels in Northeast Ohio. I spend a lot of my time raising money, and most Clevelanders think of alternative investing as leaving a mutual fund and investing in their nephew's apartment building dream or something like that. So I really encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, keep coming to NCAF events, and support startups because it's an exciting asset class. I love it. I spend most of my time in it. And the risk-reward nature of it is really unlike any other category. So, Charlie, we're going to start with you. One of the topics for us today is when in a startup, how is partnering with someone larger than you valuable? How does when it's 2 or 3 people like Todd described early on, how does a strategic alliance with a big enterprise, potential customer, potential co-founder, how can that help you when you're starting out?
Yeah, Adam, thanks. And that's a question I get a lot, and I think it has a lot to do with the region you're in. Let me explain. You know, when we think about startups, at least globally, we always think of places like Silicon Valley and Boston, maybe Austin, Texas, and a few other New York, other places like that. And in those places, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of brain power. There's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. You run into people in all the places I'm talking about. I mean, they literally tried businesses. They tried things. Some failed, some not that successful. It doesn't really matter. There's this culture around it. And you come to other parts of the country, mainly Midwest, and many of us work for great companies that I work for as well, and I'm proud of, and I love working with, that were startups, but it was about 150 years ago, right? Everybody's a startup at some point. And I think one of the things that's important, especially if you look at deal flow and financials and money being raised, when you're on the coast, you have access to a lot of capital, and you can organically build on your own. You can build in a bubble, because you can afford the bubble. I mean, things are expensive there, but put in perspective, there's a lot of dollars going in to the investment of these businesses. Well, in the Midwest, we're a lot more conservative. That's Captain Obvious, right? We know that. But I think the thing that and I personally have experienced in the Midwest, is to be successful and beat those companies that you compete with on the coast. The only way you can really do that, because you're not going to raise the same amount of money, and I would argue you don't need to. It's a waste of money. Explorys raised 1/5 of what our biggest competitor raised, and we exited at significantly more than they did.
How much did you raise? Can you say how much you raised?
We raised $20 million, and so we had competitors, and that's not a lot of money, given that it was IBM that wound up taking us out in the end. And we were, and that was prior to possibly going public. So that's not a lot of dough. And the reason we did that, or able to do that, was because we didn't have the luxury of operating inside of a bubble. We had to get out and engage, in that case, the health system, so Cleveland Clinic, and University Hospital, and SUMA, and Metro Health, and Mercy, all in this region. We had to engage them. By the way, I didn't have any healthcare experience when I did that. None. Neither did my other co-founder, Steve McHale. Neither one of us knew anything about healthcare. Thank God we had a Neil Jane in Cleveland Clinic. But, I'll tell you, they took us under their wing. They taught us about what was important.
The health systems, the bigger partners.
The strategics.
Okay.
They didn't even need to put a lot of money in. That wasn't the key. In fact, they didn't. What was most important is that they gave us a shot. They gave us a shot how to learn and perfect the product. And when we went outside the region, people were blown away. They're like, how did you guys, with the little bit of money that you raised, and not knowing anything about healthcare, how in the hell did you guys get ahead of everybody? And the answer was strategic partnerships and working closely and pilots. That is so absolutely critical. And I think to a large degree, it's the secret to success in the Midwest.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlie. I'm going to go to Marty now. Marty worked so hard for more than 20 years at Tiburon Technology, a company he founded. And he just earned my respect and the respect of so many others. Even if any of you have ever been involved in owning your own business, he would sometimes have to even forego his own paycheck to meet payroll for team members. And I just could not think any higher of Marty for how he led that business and brought it through a few pivots, which we're going to talk about, and then eventually sold to a very large corporation, Dell/EMC. And Marty, thank you for being here. I know you're kind of shy, but can you share with the group a little bit about, for you, I watched you partner with like New York City or major California municipalities as customer partners. So what was that like for you as a generally small Northeast Ohio technology company?
So I'll talk about this in a couple different ways. Our business was helping people take an application off an IBM mainframe and and moving it down to a server. And our three most favored future states were Oracle, Microsoft, or IBM. And none of those partnerships would actually invest in us because we weren't exclusive. And IBM didn't like us, half of them didn't like us because we were taking them off the mainframe, and the half that liked us, that took us to IBM software and hardware, loved us. So we actually had to work very hard on partnership relationships to make something significant, because you can just sign up to be a Microsoft partner, you're one of 300,000. So partnerships ended up being very, very strategic and important for us, as well as our clients and our partners. And we would typically work the client relationship by doing a fixed bid project with no out-of-scope items. And when the out-of-scope items started building up, we didn't do change orders. We negotiated publicity and PR and stronger partnerships. And so we did a system for ADP payroll, and traditionally they wouldn't allow us to use their name until they didn't have any extra money in their budget and they had change orders. And that led to a negotiation of, we'll do a press release and you can use our logo. And so, you know, that kind of forced the IT people into not wanting to ask for money, and instead they would promote our company internally and allow us to promote it externally.
So the PR was a tool for you.
Yeah, so we used a fixed bid change order lever to really strengthen a partnership and get some visibility.
And did you ever feel, you know, I'm gonna stay with you, Marty, you know, the imposter syndrome that founders can sometimes feel like, how am I in here dealing with the city of New York, or how am I dealing with these big boys, big girls? It's almost easier to sell, and it's harder on the operations side afterwards. Did you ever feel that way dealing with these big entities?
Yeah, so, you know, scared to death. So we did State Street Banks, we modernized their system, and they were doing 20% of Wall Street's transactions in the back end. Like any entrepreneur, you sit down with them and say, can you do this? We go, yeah, we can do this. And we go back to the office and you go, can we do this? And I'm thinking, oh my God, 20% of Wall Street, I could take the whole country down if I don't get this right. And then we move over to ADP payroll. They're doing 15% of North American payroll. Of course, I sit down with as an entrepreneur, they say, can you really do this? I say, yeah, I can do this. And I get back to the office and they go, can we do this? You know, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to run into so many people, their paycheck's not going to be right. It's going to be my fault, 15% of the country. Yeah, so, you know, like every entrepreneur, yeah, absolutely, you can do it. And it ended up, we spent a tremendous amount of time on testing and validation. That's how we made sure it absolutely had to work. I mean, these weren't things we could take lightly, but yeah, I was scared to death most of the time.
Okay, Charlie, I want to be helpful to our audience as well. You have well-intentioned investors in front of you, prospective investors. What are some of the things they should think about the voice of the entrepreneur, the repeat entrepreneur? How can they be most helpful to someone like you in addition to investing in your company? What's the ideal early stage investor like?
Yeah, Adam, I think we see a lot of it in this room. It is not easy doing a startup. You have twists and turns, you have things that come at you. There is an abundance of unfairness, and that's just the game, right? That's what you have to play. There are challenges that, if you look, especially in the business-to-business climate, you've got people that make the purchasing decisions that aren't compensated or measured on their risk. It's their lack of risk that they're compensated for. And
you say no.
It's easy, yeah, it's really easy. And many of these folks are not literally, figuratively, they're putting their head in their lion's mouth, right? And they don't know if you're going to deliver, right? Marty and his team were able to deliver, but what if they didn't? That would have been it. And so the thing I think that's really important is that we all, especially in this region, that have startups that blossom and mature in organizations, we need to not just be investors, myself included, we have to be advocate investors, meaning we will advocate for these startups. It means we will pick up the phone and call others when they need help and say, get behind these guys. And that, I think, is just really important and lost a lot. And they don't do, it's interesting, they do that in Silicon Valley all the time, by the way. They have a whole network around this. I don't see it happening enough here, and we need to be able to do that.
And we were preparing for this a little bit. You said we don't really need silent investors. We want unshy investors,
Yeah.
right?
We want advocates, right? We want the advocate investor that says, I'm not just investing in them, this is the right thing to do for you, whether it's Key or PNC or Cleveland Clinic or whoever. Say, we're behind this, we're part of the community, we want to see this thing grow, we know this is going to create jobs faster than anything else will. It'll create wealth in the region that gets passed along. Be there for these guys, it's scary as heck, and I think that's one of the things that's really important. And we are seeing that, I will tell you that our friends at North Coast and Jumpstart, even in my endeavors, they've run through walls, and that matters, and we just need to continue to do more.
Yeah, so for each of you in the audience, you might be on the board of an entity that could be a partner, or you might have a friend who's on the board of one of these really large corporations that could benefit from a startup's services or something new that they're introducing. So relationships always matter. It's not algorithms anymore, thankfully, Todd, for people like you and I. Relationships still matter, thankfully. Marty, let's switch back to you. I also like the subject of pivoting and patience. And as investors, we always want ROI, but this is a very long time frame asset class. So I know with Tiburon, you didn't take on too many outside investors, but you did have to deal with a lot of curves in the road that required a lot of patience and pivoting. I don't think you'll mind me asking, I want to share for the group. I mean, he was achieving some success and got a really fancy car, got a second home, got a third home. Things changed and you had to really pivot, right, Marty?
Yes, I'll say this for the bankers in the room. So we're in year 21, we had never lost money, grown our top line, been profitable every year, never had a layoff. And then Y2K hit, it was post Y2K and everybody decided to outsource. And our $20 million company fell to about $4 million and it got there fast. And so I sat down with a turnaround expert and he said, I'm looking at your personal financial statement and I think as a sign of faith, you're gonna have to sell your airplane, your Rolls Royce, your second home, your four-seaters, your pontoon boat, and your speedboat. So I said, well, okay. So I kind of went all in and then I put in the cash that I had and I underestimated. I ended up putting in, more than I really had. So I did have some, if you will, investors. But, we had to pivot and I really had to go all in. It was like starting all over again. But the pivot was interesting because it took a while, as Adam mentioned. We wanted to develop all the things we thought would be valuable. We wanted to have recurring revenue. We wanted to have software as a service. We wanted to have scalability. We were a service company. So the first thing we did was we put in a project methodology and ran all of our projects on the same methodology. And we started coming up with our own IP to enhance each phase of that methodology and processes to onboard each people with their well-defined inputs and outputs. So that we've got a number of different projects outside of our 100% staff being full. We could ramp people up for phase 1, phase 2. They could participate independently. So we needed to do that, and we needed to develop our software. And we actually had our exit before we actually finished our tech roadmap of having the software as a software as a service model. We were building it and running it internally. And so as an internal software as a service, we were vetting it by running our projects, and we were getting ready to make it commercially available when we had our exit. But those things took like 5 or 6 years to get to that stage. And so it just took time as a service company to develop IP and processes and the referenceability and all those factors. So
I like this detail, let me interrupt Marty, because in your story I think it's relevant to the NCAP crowd. After the pivot, after the banking workout, you decided to then position your company for an eventual sale for the first time, I think. So are you saying it took 5 or 6 years at that point?
Yeah,
so it's almost like a startup all over again.
It was like a startup. So what happened was, I was always approached by people who just have your name in a call and want to sell your company, and I always thought, what would I do now? Well, I pretty much almost lost everything, and I thought, well, if I'm going to rebuild, I'm going to be smart, and I want to build it to be profitable and have value for an exit. So every decision I make has to be valuable and profitable. And I'll give you an example. I was hiring 5 or 6 people, and IBM just had a layoff, and there was a Denver office that had 6 people, and they said, hey, you can hire us, we'll open up the office, and we're ready to go. And then I had another 6 IBM people that work in remotely. And so I sat back and I already identified 4 different potential buyer profiles. And in my buyer profiles, it didn't matter to any one of them if I had an extra office. I mean, my buyer profiles for companies like Microsoft because, and eventually Dell put us in play, they wanted us exclusively to go after their customers to move all the mainframe people to Dell. So I thought, is it really going to impress Dell to say I've got 6 people in Denver in a little cubicle? And so I saved the money and I hired the 6 people to work remotely. But the point is, every decision I made, I had to look through the eyes of the potential buyer, and will it make me profitable? And so that really shaped a lot of our decisions.
I'm going to ask Charlie a question, and then I'm going to tell you guys now if you have a question, think of it. I'll call on you after this next question. Charlie, tell us a little bit about what Actual is and what you're trying to achieve, and if you think a strategic partnership will be a key part of your early stage growth.
Yeah, so Actual is a company that at the highest level solves the problem.
Keep it simple for me.
Yeah, solves the problem of verifying proof. Verifying assertions that are made by every single day by some third party. Combining that assertion to a proof from another individual or an entity and verifying that that is actually true. And that is definitely the case. We see it all the time when we hire people. How many people in the room have hired someone? Okay. So you know in that process, there's that in the back of your head you say, does this person have all those qualifications that I thought they had? And the stakes are even higher in regulated industries, whether it's aviation or healthcare or financial services, they're required to verify everything about an employee. And that is a very expensive process today. It slows a lot of things down. In industries like healthcare, where time in many ways is money, where it takes 90 to 120 days to get through that process, and every day you can't put a physician to work at $7,500 and miss revenue a day, you need to change the game. You need to change how that process works. And so what we've done is we've built a technology that digitally binds an assertion to a proof. So you can verify that an entity or a person does actually have that skill set. And when there's 25 to 30s for a physician, for instance, that saves a lot of time and opens up a lot of opportunities for healthcare to expand and channels to be expanded to additional places like in the home or via mobile. All these areas that require these kinds of verifications. So we think it's a multi-billion-dollar problem. We got to solve it, and it's something we think we can do right here. But I will tell you that to do it, we have to build a multi-sided network, and part of that involves engaging those institutions, whether it's in financial services or healthcare or aviation or whatever, financial services and healthcare, 2 big ones right here in our backyard, to adopt this technology to save money and improve their business, because that will begin to build a network. And so that's why we think this is important and an exciting new journey.
If you're at all like me right now and you're thinking, that doesn't seem like that big of an industry, I felt that way about Explorys when this gentleman and his co-founder created that business, and I didn't get it. I was early on so wrong in how big a problem you did eventually solve. So I suspect that'll be true with Actual too.
Well, yeah, and it's always a risk. We all know this. But the biggest opportunities, the biggest exits come from not the places where it's completely obvious. Right. It's the places where we have to think about, wait a second, what are the billion-dollar problems that exist today in healthcare? It was data, right? We're moving into a value-based care world where there were more and more demands to reduce the cost of healthcare, and you couldn't possibly do without data, and that industry wasn't leveraging it.
You guys were ahead of your time. Does anyone have a question for our panelists? I have plenty more. Just raise your hand if you do. Okay, Marty, I'd like to. I don't see any hands right now. Marty, what was it like when Dell calls you down to Austin, Texas, and you're thinking, yeah, I don't know, I've heard of this company. They're probably not interested. Maybe they are. Talk about that for a few minutes.
Well, sure. Part of our strategy, I'll do press releases all the time for anybody involved in every project. So Dell put us in play by saying we want to have you exclusively. And the M&A guy said, we'd like to talk to you. You can come down to Plano, Texas, which was the EDS corporate headquarters. And can you make a meeting next Thursday, 3 o'clock? I said, sure. So I replied, what's the agenda? And who we're going to be talking to? I want to prepare for the meeting.
This is a great story, Todd.
And so the response was, be in the room at 3 o'clock. So what's the play? I'm going down to corporate headquarters for Dell, right? Like, yeah, think, what would you do? Just be in a room at 3 o'clock. I'm like, seriously? They're gaming me? They're a $60 billion global tech company and they're gaming me? So I said, well, I better wear a suit and tie. I better bring like 3 different PowerPoints, and if with the techies, I can take my tie off or whatever. So I get down there and I show up in a boardroom, and they're all talking and they're all dressed up. And
So it was just you?
yeah,
And how many of them?
10. And so we're in the big boardroom in Plano, and they said, well, Marty, did you get the agenda? I said, yeah, I got the agenda, be in the room at 3 o'clock. And they said, what do you think we're going to talk about? And I said, well, we'll probably talk about what's important to you. Ah, good idea. Let's get the meeting started. My name is Steve Schuckenbrock. I'm president of Dell. I control a $40 billion line of business. I have 125,000 employees. So the next guy goes, well, I'm head of strategy. Michael flies me out here once a month, and I control a $10 billion line of business. He doesn't make a move without my input. They're all going around the room, you know.
Bragging.
But the funniest part was when they got around the room, they said, you know, Michael Dell's like, you know, this age, and he started with just a couple of $1,000, and now he's a $60 billion company. And I'm thinking, I think I started the same time he did. I better not bring that up, you know.
But it all worked out, and we're grateful that you are off to new things here in Northeast Ohio. You're way too young to retire. Did you want to say
Yeah, I want to make another point. So what put a lot of juice in the deal was EMC just lost the deal to Dell. So Dell put me in play, made a short list, got a broker, you know, went to market, got some showings, and then EMC did not want to lose to Dell again. And so that probably put another 20% in the deal, which is just luck and timing, but you can't underestimate ego when you're dealing with the M&A guys.
Okay, questions for these star repeat entrepreneurs? David Lougheed, you're our sponsor. You probably have a really cerebral question. I'll put you on the spot. You deal with a lot of big corporations.
Yeah, well, I work for one. Yeah, so I guess one of the questions I would have would be, you know, how do you get put in play? I mean, what are the steps you're taking as an entrepreneur to get that thing to happen? When do you decide it's going to happen? And once you decide it's going to happen, how are you going about it?
Happen like the sale of the business or like traction? Oh, the sale towards the end. Okay. So what are you looking for? What needs to happen leading up to that time to sell? Is David's austere question.
Yeah, I'll try to do this both times because again, my premise has always been whether it's actual or Explorys, follow money, right? Look where the money and the problems are. As you're growing that business, ask the same question. Are we doing things that have a big financial impact to our customers? Are we meaningful with regards to that? And there's a lot of other ways to measure the success of the business, don't get me wrong, but that's the one. And when you start getting to the point where your competitors are recognizing that you are bringing significantly more value to their customers over and over and over again, sooner or later, they're going to take notice. The analysts are going to take notice, and either you're going to go public or you're going to get bought. That's typically what happens. So I know it sounds cliche, follow money.
Good. Marty, anything to add to that?
Follow on from Charlie? No. Oh, okay. So yeah, so I was chasing them until they caught me. So I would take everybody in every project we completed, anybody in the solution, and I'd do a press release with or without their permission. And for example, Dell, I'd say, well, we just moved somebody off, and quote by Marty Tarr, our customer's really pleased, they moved all the stuff off the mainframe down to Dell equipment. So I didn't ask their permission to put in the press release. I mentioned their name, and I put a copy right in the bottom of the press release. So then I would send that to Dell, and I did the same for Oracle and Microsoft and everybody. And then I would contact once a month all the people that were in that buying profile, and I would tell them the success we had the past month, and please let me know if there's any of your customers we can do to help. Well, they started following me. They started seeing everybody else's press releases as well. And so that space started to heat up, and they saw we were getting more traction, more visible accounts like State Street Bank, and Fidelity Brokerage, and ADP Payroll, and City of San Francisco. You know, that's when Dell said, you know what, they're not a big company, let's buy them now before they get big. So, you know, I kind of chased them by design, but it started with, you know, a little bit of strategy and creating buyer profiles and finding out who you need to talk to and contacting them constantly And I subscribe to the relationship marketing of think of me first, think of me often, think of me well. So I made a note to reach out to every one of those people once a month.
That's awesome, Marty. We have one more question, and then we have to make room for the next panel.
I've heard the same comment that there's just not enough money invested in Northeast Ohio. What do you guys see as the reasons for that? And what would be some potential solutions to change that dynamic and keep hearing what you're saying?
Could you repeat the
Yes.
Yeah.
Good question. If it's true that there's not enough early stage investing in Northeast Ohio, one, is that true? And if so, how could we change that? Prerogative of the chair, I'd like to hit that for a second, if I might. Is that okay, Charlie?
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time raising money, and I have seen a positive increase in the number of individuals who are choosing to risk in, or to take the risk and to invest in startups like theirs or like the others on the charts that Todd was showing. Just one metric, for instance, I'm a partner in a fund where in 2014, 11 people from Northeast Ohio invested in this venture fund. 11, so it's a metric for you. The same fund, Fund 2 in 2017, more awareness about startups, NCAP's work, Jumpstart's work. We have 33 investors from Northeast Ohio. Just 33, but it's a lot more than 11 in a few years. So I see a lot of that in little ways. I don't know what you guys think, but it is increasing.
Yeah, I think it's increasing. The economy has something to do with that too. But I think it's increasing. I think the thing that is really important here, there isn't enough. We need more. I think we need not as much focus. One of these guys make crazy ideas are great, right? I'm an idea guy, I guess, but they're not worth as much as what people think they are. And we always sort of scrutinize the idea of, okay, what does this company look like after year 5? That's a spreadsheet formula. That's what that is, because we don't know.
Right.
I think the most important thing about an organization is and Marty talked about this, is its ability to pivot, to jive and tack. I mean, I'm not a sailor, but I talk about this a lot. I guess I listen to yacht rock radio once in a while, but the whole idea about jiving and tacking and sailing, this idea that the wind is shifting, you got to move. If you never do that, you either run into a stall or you run into land and you crash, right? And so we need to, as investors, we need to take a look at the entrepreneurs and the companies we're funding and say, it's not about so much about the idea. It's important to come up with a good idea, but how good can they pivot? How can they recognize and have and be able to swallow their pride for a minute and say, we need to pivot when it makes sense? Because we did it in all of our businesses. We had one pivot or another, and they all worked out fine. Had we not pivoted, the business never would have, in some cases, would have run dry. We raised $8.5 million in our first company in Everstream. We would have blown through all of that had we not pivoted towards big data, telecommunications, and broadband. And you just have to do it. It's scary, but that's what we want to look for. And again, that's what we want to support our entrepreneurs with.
Marty, you want to say any quick words about the investor community in Northeast Ohio?
So I think it's true that we're probably difficult raising money in Cleveland, but I think if we had more success, we'd have more money flow. And I think part of the success, what I've been seeing for a lot of my friends that have failed is, Charlie talked about having investors as an advocate, but I think you need to be active. When you look at these startups and you give them some training in social media, or give them some training in putting in a capital structure, or working capital line, or hiring and firing processes, or all those things, you can't expect a small startup or people that are very busy to really grasp that. And I think we need maybe possibly an enhanced model where we've got all this wisdom on the sidelines, but it's not in the company and they fail, and then we sit around and talk about, these guys had no digital strategy for marketing, and I can't believe they were underfunded their working capital line, they weren't managing their KPIs and all this wisdom. We don't push it down into the startup. Now it's different, like for Charlie and some of the people that were more experienced, but most of the startups I see, they could really benefit from wisdom and more of an active involvement from people on the sidelines.
Well, Marty and Charlie, we have all benefited from your wisdom today, so thank you. How's that for a wrap up? We're going to take the bourbon and split it among the 3 of us, and we'll invite the next group up now. So thank you all.
So thank you to Adam, Marty, and Charlie. That was just awesome. I could have listened to that panel for 2 or 3 hours. Just some really cool insights and perspectives, and something I'd love to find a way to have more of a dialogue on. Before we dig in here, I think many of you know our 3 panelists here, but I wanted to give them each an opportunity just for a 30-second introduction before we dive into the questions. Alan?
Yeah, my name is Alan Brenner. My career mostly was in Silicon Valley, Bay Area. I worked for some Microsystems for about a decade, and then for Blackberry, and mostly in the capacity of developing software products, largely for wireless devices and the infrastructure to support them. And now I'm retired, living here. I'm from the Lougheed area, investing in the North Coast Angel Fund and consulting a bit on site.
Thank you. I'm Sue Tyler. Those of you who probably most recently know me as from Medical Mutual. I was there for 15 years as the CFO and treasurer, and then as the head of operations and the chief experience officer. But my career also includes, I was fortunate enough to be at Progressive during some of the crazy growth and innovation years. We had 2 startups in between Progressive and Medical Mutual. I graduated from the corporate community. I don't call it retired. And now I'm in my encore career. I'm doing some work with boards both on the for-profit and nonprofit side as either a board member or advisor. And I'm a brand new member of North Coast Angel Funds, and I'm really excited about taking my knowledge of healthcare finance and operations, since those are strengths of the region, and getting more involved in the startup community.
Thanks, Sue. I'm Komoroski, the CEO of the Cavaliers in Rock and Fieldhouse, and we manage the Fieldhouse. We have about 200 plus ticket events, 1,400 private events, and then we also have the Cleveland Monsters, our Canyon Charge, our development team for the Cavs, and then the Cavs Legion, which is our NBA 2K team, which is our esports team as well. And previous to that, I've been in sports, so Philadelphia Eagles, Minnesota Timberwolves, Pittsburgh Penguins, Pirates, and also with the Burger Company Sports Marketing Arm, so I just can't keep a job, so I'm hanging here for a bit. Thanks.
Well, great to have you all here. Alan, we'll start with you. You heard at the beginning, trying to frame this from an angel investor's perspective. You're an angel investor. The last panel tried to frame this from an entrepreneur's perspective. You work with a lot of startups. And as we dive into the corporate piece, is there anything to set, especially my piece straight, to add context as we transition into the corporate side?
Yeah, I think just kind of building on points from the last panel, especially some of Charlie's comments. One of the things you're looking for is a good connection between the innovators in the startup and the customers that are potential buyers for the startup's products. And the quality of that connection is crucial in creating positive opportunity for the startup and positive opportunity for the customers. And by quality, I mean the level of acuity in the startup about the problems that the customers are facing and the relative representativeness of those customers that they're working with. If those customers are well chosen and actually stand for a potential large market, and the startup comes to get a good, high acuity understanding of the needs that those companies are facing, and then sparks can fly and the opportunity can grow pretty rapidly.
Great. And so, Sue, in your last role at Medical Mutual, you owned a lot of the business. You oversaw claims, customer care, the website, mobile. That's a pretty full plate. To what extent did you rely on startups for innovation and just augmentation of what you and your team were building and delivering?
So I don't speak on behalf of Medical Mutual directly anymore, but I would say for Medical Mutual and any payer, they work with a lot of outside companies, whether they're industry agnostic, like, call center technology, workforce scheduling, call analytics, those type of things, or things that are very, very industry specific. And I'll tell you, in the healthcare world, there are functions and companies that do things that you would have never dreamed of, that these are big companies doing functions that you've never heard of. And we didn't, the points that the prior panel made about the risk aversion and the buyers, it's hard in a regulated industry and in an industry like that to give your reputation, your risk, your customer, and put it in someone else's hands. You talked about the potential consequences. Well, if somebody's standing at the pharmacy on January 1st and they need a medicine and they can't get it because they're saying, you're not showing as active on the system, you can't go, shit, that wasn't me, that was that payment vendor I contracted with, and they've got a little system glitch, and they're off for the holidays, so go back in a few days. You can't do that, so I understand that the hesitance and the due diligence with which a corporation has to choose who they work with, and the monitoring once they do work with someone to make sure that they're still well funded, to make sure that they haven't lost people, to make sure that they haven't taken on other customers that have taken the focus off of you. I think it is a big deal for companies, especially in a regulated industry. You're putting your entire license and your business at risk, not just your reputation, security breach. It isn't going to reflect on your company that you contracted with, it's going to reflect on you. So I think I understand the risk. I've been on that side of it. We did do business with a lot of companies, not too many early stage, and had to vet them and manage them really carefully.
That's great, and we'll come back to that in a couple of minutes here. So, Len, for many of us with a fan's lens, we look at the NBA and the Cavs as this friend that we've grown up with and had fun with, and watch people play the sport that they love. And with the business hat on, we see these incredibly sophisticated global brands which have technology behind them, which are using CRM, marketing automation, and analytics to best monetize the product. So are you able to just pull the curtain back for us a little bit and give us a sense of how you use technology and innovation to drive value for a professional sports team?
Sure. Well, first of all, we're blessed to have a leader like Dan Gilbert who really values innovation and being at the cutting edge. So when you think about Rocket Mortgage, right? He had 500 developers working on what amounts to be a mortgage within 7 minutes, and just totally revolutionizing the industry. Now they're the largest mortgage retailer in the country. I remember when Dan initially bought the team, there were 12, 13, and just continue to evolve and overtake a behemoth like Wells Fargo. In our case, we have a CIO, Mike Conley, who's brilliant, and so he oversees IT, digital, and development in our world, so which is unusual. One of only 3 within pro sports who do so. We have a development team. We're the only team in the NBA with a development team. We have a big team, our business intelligence group. We're the largest in the league with 11 team members, and they're just curating, processing data, and how can we utilize that to be able to manifest decisions. We have a mousetrap team, as Dan likes to call them, mousetrap teams. And this group, so as Dan likes to say, it's tough to fix the plane while you're flying it. And so this group is about process innovation. They're embedded in our organization. We call cheese from our team members. We get 300 pieces of cheese every month that we can deploy and utilize in what we're doing as well. Within that, we're one of the most innovative and progressive leagues in the world. Having worked in, I told you all those leagues, but I've worked in every league. There's no league like the NBA in terms of team business innovation and looking at what's outside of our industry to bring that in. And we also happen to be in Dan's ecosystem, one of 130 companies within our family of companies, and we're constantly exchanging best practices, ideas, evolving from all that. And then we're also in the esports world. So our Cavs Legion team, but we're also partners with 100 Thieves, so League of Legends, Call of Duty, Fortnite, and all of that. And it's so there's always something going on in our world, And we've got an innovation ecosystem, and really credit to the culture that Dan has set within the entirety of the family of companies, and we've been fortunate enough to be in a position to fail. And it's tough to innovate without failing. A lot of teams in our league and other leagues don't want to be exposed in terms of failure. In our case, we're encouraged to fail. And as Michael Jordan said, because I fail, we succeed. And hopefully that's an accident that's worked well for us.
Terrific. So Sue, you are currently on the board of directors for a Cleveland Clinic spin-out. And can you give us a sense of what that company is all about, but specifically what it's like to have the clinic as a pilot customer and how that may be impactful for the startup?
Yeah, so the company I sit on, Family Care Path, is actually not a company that started outside the clinic that went to work with the clinic. In fact, it's the reverse. The company is commercializing technologies that were developed at the Cleveland Clinic. One of the technologies, my legacy, was out of the Genomic Medicine Institute, and it gathers family health histories from individuals, runs them through algorithms to predict risk, and then provide clinical guidelines for the risks that are identified. The other is a navigation tool developed at Taussig Cancer Center to take an oncology patient for a layperson navigator, help identify the barriers to care, get them into the system for treatment, get them through the system, and retain that patient through the course of their treatment. So kind of a CRM for a patient in the oncology. And then the company's developed a genetic counseling network to be delivered via telephone PC for those that are identified at genetic risk through the My Legacy tool. So we started with the clinic, and I joined after the company was founded and underway. But it started with technology developed at the clinic, and then I was working the other way, trying to make this commercially viable in outside markets. But it's interesting, you know, the big company culture, even when it's your parent company, it's a big company, you know, and there's clinicians, there's financial people, there's administrative people, there's IT people, there's a whole lot of stakeholders within a large organization. So for a small company trying to navigate, it can be challenging. But you know, this company was very fortunate to have started with the support of the products that were developed there and the support of Cleveland Clinic Ventures from the get-go.
Great. Building off of your experience working with a company who is the pilot partner to a corporation, Len, the Cavs have been partners to many startups, one of which is one that many of us know pretty well, Veritix, which commercialized a product called Flash Sheets, which most of us have probably used to enter a Cavs game and to give tickets and share tickets with friends and colleagues. Many of us have known that story fairly early because one of the North Coast Angel Fund members, Sam Trace, was the founding CEO of that company. So from your perspective, what was it like to be the partner dependent on a startup who was running your pilot? And you know, contrary to what Marty said, maybe they didn't know it. I'm sure this was always going to work well. Sam always knew it was going to work, but with the uncertainty, how did you work through being a pilot customer?
Well, you know, when you say a pilot customer, so incubated with us, there was a mad scientist who was on the Chicago, might not say mad in a positive way, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, came to us, he was going to run a number of teams. He had this concept, this digital ticketing concept, and at that point, you remember, it was all paper tickets, right? Everything was paper tickets. So it was very frustrating to us. We were dealing with a large entity who was still dominant in the industry, who wasn't really embracing change. We wanted to do different things. It was like, well, you know, we don't really need to. They're a monopoly. And so we were able to take it from his thought bubble, his idea. We wanted to accelerate it. Actually did a test with Quicken Loans team members from Detroit, with 50 of them to be able to use this digital ticketing concept. We ended up buying out this mad scientist and starting Flash Sheets. And we were so it was all one. Dan, us, we were one, and it was born through the Cavs. And as you saw, it goes back to what we were talking about. There was a need. In this case, you look at our industry from ticketing, lost tickets. I bring the wrong tickets to the game. I want to give my ticket to somebody. I have to leave it at will call, and I have to go to look, and all those things, fraud, you name it, it's solved for all of that. And it's been, for us, it was phenomenal in terms of, again, having someone like Dan who created that culture of being okay to fail, be able to do something different, to take on what is a monopoly, a virtual monopoly in some respects, based on who the ticketing entity was in terms of Ticketmaster at that point. And you know, the amazing thing right now, we're a partner with AEG and TPG, as we've taken merged flash sheets, and they had another platform called Outbox. Flash sheets has now become the predominant platform. It is arguably the second largest ticketing company in the world, and is now operates globally in everywhere from Asia to Europe to obviously the U.S. and throughout. And it's funny to think about going back in time, and that was just again a thought bubble from the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. The words evolved to now, but it's been great for us, and we still are a beta with everything that goes on. So you know, AEG is a behemoth in the sports entertainment industry, but we're just saying, look, we'll take that on. We'll try that out. We're willing to be the beta, and we're willing to take that risk where others are afraid. So let 5 of the people work through that issue, work through all the issues, and then we'll take it on.
Terrific. So Alan, in your experience at Blackberry and Sun, you've worked with startups, worked with partners that are growing, you've acquired a bunch of companies. What have you learned about the good, bad, and ugly of working with startups from the corporate side?
Well, I'd like to focus on the good, I guess, to start. Startups attract a different temperament, a different kind of personality. People who like to move fast, think out of the box, don't have a lot of tolerance and patience for corporate bureaucracy. And if you're a big organization, you just move a bit slower than a typical startup. And there's a great opportunity to latch onto someone who's very fleet of foot and essentially steal their momentum and bring it in-house to either extend your product line or complete infrastructure necessary to support existing functionality. And oftentimes, in my experience, companies become a source of new talent, new thinking. They renew your culture. They renew your sort of the intellectual ferment in the company. And when I was at Blackberry, I acquired about a dozen companies that ended up comprising maybe a third of my organization and more than half of the leadership. So there's lots of great benefits to being inquisitive if you're inside a big company that's trying to stay competitive. On the downside, you never know, right? When you're doing due diligence on a startup, you can never really be certain that what you think you're getting, you're actually getting. You also have a challenge in integrating an acquired company. Your own organization or your own company can resist the integration, feel threatened by it, and as an executive trying to make it all work, it can be challenging, and sometimes it just doesn't pan out.
Alan, just stay with you for a follow-up. Unlike how Len articulated the Cavs organization, many organizations are not good at working with startups. They're not good at being beta customers. They can move too slow, not be decisive, change their priorities midstream. What does it take to be a good partner for a startup, and what should we as investors be looking at to vet amongst our potential corporate partners to make sure that the best news that a company ever has, that they got this big deal, won't be what ends up burying the company?
Well, I think the most important attribute you're looking for, I'm looking at it for a moment from the startup's point of view, and then I'll come back and describe it from the corporate point of view. From the startup's point of view, you're looking for somebody, like I said earlier, who's representative of the potentially large market, and you're looking for a customer who's really high capability. The worst thing you can do as a startup is get involved in the sales and deployment process with a group of an organization that isn't very functional. Because it's the opportunity, there's the cost, but the opportunity cost is a real killer. Especially since you're in a race against the clock, there are usually competitors, the opportunity window can close very quickly. So flipping around and looking at it from the point of view of the company, you try to be, you try to bring strong talent to the relationship with the startup, people who know the terrain they're working in, who have decent social skills, can reach out and be proactive and be responsive, so that relationship and the sales process and it's really got to be a great partnership where both sides are energetically engaging each other and there's great follow-up and great communication. So those are the qualities that really, in my experience, make for success.
Sue, in hearing you talk about how you think about and vet prospective partners, especially in these regulated industries, it sounds like you have a pretty sophisticated BS detector that's been calibrated over many years. What can we learn from that? Because as angels, we want to find those issues, we want to diligence those items and either decide not to move forward with companies or to help mitigate risks so that ultimately they can be successful.
So, in thinking about it from the corporate perspective, one of the things, beyond all the customers' references, the technology sound, the people checkout, all the usual things, especially working with a earlier stage company or a smaller company, to me, it would be important on the larger corporate side where the execution risk is large and the consequence is large, as part of the due diligence, figure out what those risks are and what is my contingency plan and what am I going to monitor and what milestones am I going to hold them to make sure that, if the train's going off the tracks, that I've got a backup plan in place, because unfortunately businesses do fail. They lose some funding, something happens, or I recall a company that I did business with once, was acquired by another company, and the company they were acquired by shut down the line of business that we, were using them for with very little notice. So again, identifying what the risk, what my backup plan is, and when do I know that I got to pull the cord and do something about it. I think that's part of the due diligence, as well as what does it look like the day I start doing business with them. It's how do I manage that relationship going forward and making sure that it works for both of us.
So I've got two more questions and we'll turn it over to all of you, so please think of questions for this group. Len, you mentioned that you are working with a lot of parts of the organization, that the technology and marketing side is completely integrated. So what are the other opportunities for a group of investors here and entrepreneurs in the room? What problems can we all help you solve?
Well, I would say, first of all, much would be sort of readily apparent. So anything that enhances the fan experience, we're always about that. And in fact, that's basically why we're going through this massive transformation of Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. We will tell you that you will be amazed when you walk in. Come here, we have Black Keys on September 30th, and it is unbelievable. But that is taking what was an operational challenge building, egress, ingress, no neighborhoods or places to gather. That's all solved with that, and technology in terms of the enhancements we have there. Just simple like LED lighting treatments that we'll have. There was some tests done. If you look at the tweets or on our Twitter account today, you'll see we have much like Terminal Tower with the lighting on the top of Terminal Tower. Our curtain wall in the front will have the ability to do 1,500 different color combinations with motion and just change the whole personality of the building. And so anyways, anything that can enhance the fan experience we'll always gain and looking at. Anything that can also generate incremental revenue. We're all about that as well. We have ideas, and we encourage you to having thoughts or solutions. So we have a gentleman named Damian Chapman, because we're getting flooded with so many people say, hey, we think we have the best mousetrap, and that's all Damian does. He will look and he'll vet out the ideas for us. Right now, he's already profiled 400 different technology vendors, potential solutions out there that he has cataloged with us, and constantly have that idea flow coming in. We're always working with within the community here and other entities, so, and along with NRD. So anything that you would think as a fan and engage with an event or with the team or from an experiential end, we're for it. There's always issues or problems that are out there to be solved, and it's just one concept right away. Though I promise you though, I come D Chapman, CHATMON @cavs.com, Damion, DAMION. Send them our way, and we'd be happy to vet them and see who knows, you could be the next Flash News.
Excellent. Before we turn it over to the audience, any parting shots on what we as angel investors should be thinking about and planning for to help make sure our companies are successful in partnering with corporates?
I think there were comments made in the last panel about the region and the sorts of things that make sense here. I think that's a really crucial point to consider. This is not a region where we're developing, say, fundamental quantum technology. This is a more manufacturing-oriented, distribution-oriented, light industry-oriented area, and you need to be thinking about framing a business or pursuing opportunities that make sense given the needs in the region. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is in the last 5 to 10 years, it's gotten a whole lot easier to generate a startup than it ever has been. It used to be you had to spend millions of dollars building out an IT organization, hiring all the people to staff it. Now you can synthesize a startup on relatively little money and relatively little time, and that creates all manner of opportunity to serve the kind of problems that we have in this area. So I think that's an angel investor point of concern.
I guess the whole world of healthcare finance, having lived in the bubble, now that I'm outside of it, you're all consumers of it. It is so fragmented, it is so complex, it is so administratively burdensome. There's just no lack of opportunities, and when you think about how you can streamline processes, improve the patient experience, get providers of healthcare out of the administration business and practicing to their license, there's just no lack of opportunities to improve and align the interests of stakeholders. So I think there's just a ton that can be done in this area, and this is the right place to do it. So I'm really excited to be at the point in my career where I can support the startup energy in those areas.
Todd, it's a great question, and I just want to double down on what you started off with, because when you were doing your presentation, you talked about, is there a market? And that's something we look at as it's coming through in terms of what is the actual opportunity in terms of what takes place. If you don't have all these ideas come at you, they're just, it reminds me of, so how I built that with, how I built this with Guy Raz, anybody ever listened to that? And there was one with Richard Dyson, or, he was talking about the founder of Dyson, vacuum cleaners. He talked about how he had come up with a better wheelbarrow, but it got very frustrated because there really wasn't much sell-through, and people just liked the wheelbarrow, and it was, and so anyways, there wasn't much of a market for what he did, and he hit on something, a huge market with a better mousetrap with the vacuum cleaner and his vacuum cleaner concept. So, but that would just be one that you really do your due diligence relative to that market, talk to people who are experts in the space, listen, and because you can spend a whole heck of a lot of time and investment in something and find out that, it may be great, but there's really not much of an appetite for it out there.
We have time for a couple of questions from the group. Mike?
Glenn, you mentioned that Damian
That's a great question for Damien. I couldn't hazard a guess right now. I know we work with a lot of different local entities, so he'll also work with Jumpstart and work with Case and Akron and any number of different entities. So there's a healthy amount, but we're in a space in an industry that's global. So we'll have people coming to us from Australia or wherever with ideas. And being that the NBA is a global brand, so our games are telecast in 215 different countries and territories. Where the NBA Finals, a billion people are watching. So there are fans everywhere, the Philippines or whatever, coming to us with concepts and ideas. So we're open as far as the platform goes, but there's always the home court advantage.
Excellent. Other question? Seeing no others, I'll do a quick parting shot here, and then we'll ask for everyone's help here. Marty?
Yeah, I have a question for
Yeah.
Sue, and that is, how important is it in the medical industry to have a product that has a insurance code, for billing?
So, great question. So he was asking about how important to have a medical code. What's been interesting to me is I've met with a number of companies that have a medical device or something, and I'll meet with somebody that's a clinical person, a researcher, or a technical person that built a mousetrap, and I will ask, who's going to pay for it? Is this a billable item that'll create revenue for the system? Is it an expense that's replacing another expense? Is it going to be coded, covered, and reimbursed? Because it's not enough to have a code. You have to have a code. There has to be a reimbursement attached to it, etc. And what's been interesting to me is how many times the eyes roll back to the head. They don't want to think about the revenue model for the medical device or service. It's enough that it's good, it's going to do good, it's going to have great outcomes. And I think sometimes that planning of what's my revenue model and how am I going to get reimbursed for this, who is the customer, who is going to pay for this, can get overlooked. So I think that's a really important component to be considered very early, not after I've got it, I know it works, and then figure out is it going to be paid through commercial insurance or through CMS or the government. I think that's a question that needs to be answered early.
Great. Well, quick parting shot, give away the booze, welcome everyone to stick around and join us on the third floor. The parting shot is just in reflecting on a couple of the comments we heard. It's not easy to work with startups, and for corporates, they have to sacrifice. Charlie mentioned there often isn't a relationship there. You need to get a push just to engage. As Marty mentioned, sometimes it's unclear whether a startup can actually deliver what they're saying they can deliver, despite the yes we can mentality. And as Sue said, you have to keep your eye on how much money they have in the bank, whether they'll go out of business or if they're successful and bought, whether the acquiring company will shut them down. So it's not necessarily easy. So you may ask yourself, why would you do that? And there are a lot of answers to that. I think one of the ones that excites me the most about why we get behind these companies is that startups have the potential to do things better, faster, cheaper, and more creatively than industry. It's because they focus on one thing. It's because they don't have the technical debt. They don't have the time and energy and some cost that's gone into things that makes it hard to change and innovate. And they often have incredibly talented, motivated people who want to work on that problem to solve it. So that's why there's such a value prop for corporations to work with startups. And that's something I'd like to think we can all get better at building into our narrative as we advocate for these companies and try to get local corporations to be great partners for the best performing startups here in the region. So with that, we will shift to our giveaway. Maggie, I think we have a system to determine who the new rightful owner will be. Okay. So Alan, your job is to pick a number 1 to 74. That is the number of people we think are still here that registered earlier.
14.
14. Okay.
Sue, your job is to say who is associated with number 14.
Bob Nikolai,
Bob, are you still here? Bob!
a colleague of mine from Progressive. Great, was Laurel home day, Jim's from Price Waterhouse, I worked with Bob at Progressive.
This is excellent. We hope you enjoy this. Thank you. I was given a stern warning on the way in that due to facility and union rules, we're not allowed to open that here. But it is in your hands, so I trust you to do what you will with that. I'd like to ask you to join me again in thanking PNC and thanking our panelists. I appreciate everyone coming out tonight. We hope you'll join us for our upcoming angel sessions and hope to see you on the third floor right after this. Appreciate it.